Hello, and a very warm welcome to this explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're joining us today. We're going to be stripping away all the overwhelming complexities of reproductive medicine and getting right down to the bedrock. We're talking about the essential, foundational, basic sciences of human fertility. So whether you're a seasoned practitioner just looking for a sharp refresher or a focused learner stepping into this fascinating world for the very first time, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to build this knowledge from the ground up using an incredibly clear framework. Right then, let's get straight to it. Before anyone can successfully navigate the highly advanced, intricate world of in vitro fertilization, IVF, we really have to master the basics. You simply cannot build a house without a solid foundation, right? And in reproductive medicine, that foundation is anatomy, physiology, and endocrinology. This isn't just dry textbook theory we're talking about. It is quite literally the blueprint for solving subfertility. Because by deeply understanding how this system is designed to work in its perfect, natural state, you become equipped to pinpoint exactly where and why things might be going wrong for a patient. So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the foundation of fertility, then dive into male and female anatomy. From there, we'll explore the hormone command center, go inside the menstrual cycle, track spermatogenesis and transport, and finally wrap up with exactly why mastering this basic science matters so much. Okay, moving right into part 2, male and female anatomy are structural blueprints. Let's really think about the sheer elegance of female pelvic anatomy. You've got this central muscular hub, the uterus, flanked beautifully by the two ovaries, and those are connected by the delicate fallopian tubes with those sweeping fimbriae right at the ends. Down below, we have the cervix, which acts as the absolutely crucial gateway from the vagina, complete with its cervical crypts. This perfectly balanced physical space is where the entire magic of conception and gestation is supposed to happen. But, as we well know, even the best architecture can sometimes have structural flaws. And that brings us to the clinical realities. When this beautiful structural blueprint is altered in any way, subfertility often follows right behind it. For instance, the uterus itself can be compromised by fibroids, adenomyosis, or various congenital abnormalities that completely alter its size and position. The cervical gateway? Well, that might be blocked by polyps or stenosis. The ovaries can be affected by polycystic ovary syndrome, cysts, or the profound disruption caused by endometriosis. And those incredibly delicate fallopian tubes are highly vulnerable to adhesions or fluid blockages, like a hydrosalpinx. Even the surrounding pelvic peritoneum can host endometriosis or free fluid. So understanding this static anatomy really allows you to visualize exactly what is mechanically impeding a pregnancy. Now let's shift gears and think about the male structural pathway. While the female system is largely a central internal basin designed to host and nurture, the male reproductive tract is an incredibly intricate delivery system. It's a complex routing network. You start at the testes, where sperm is actually produced, travel up through the vas deferens, integrate with the seminal vesicles and the prostate gland, and go all the way out through the urethra. A physical blockage or anatomical abnormality anywhere along this highly convoluted plumbing line can entirely halt the delivery of what might otherwise be perfectly healthy sperm. Which brings us to part 3, the hormone command center, focusing on the endocrine control of fertility. Let's talk about the chemical chain of command. This is the hypothalamus, pituitary, gonadal, or HPG pathway. It's an exquisitely regulated top-down system. The primary signal originates deep in the brain at the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus then fires its orders down to the pituitary gland. Think of the pituitary as a central broadcasting station. It sends chemical messengers far down into the pelvis to stimulate the gonads, the ovaries in females and the testes in males. If there's a misfire anywhere in this neurological and chemical relay, well, the reproductive organs simply won't do their jobs, absolutely regardless of how structurally perfect they might be. Let's decode the specific chemical messengers involved here, the real alphabet soup that dictates fertility. Up at the hypothalamus, we have GnRH initiating the entire cascade. The pituitary responds to that by releasing FSH, follicle-stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone. What's really fascinating here is that FSH and LH act as vital messengers in both genders. They just have totally different target outcomes depending on whether they're acting on ovaries or testes. Down at the gonadal level, the female system is producing estrogen and progesterone to regulate the cycle, while the male system pumps out testosterone. We also have to track vital regulatory hormones like AMH, anti-Müllerian hormone, which is an absolute game changer for understanding ovarian reserve, right alongside prolactin. All right, moving on to part 4, inside the menstrual cycle, looking at applied female physiology. Now, the crucial point here is understanding how to read this absolute masterpiece of biological choreography. When we think about the endocrine control of the menstrual cycle, it's all about timing. You have this steady, crucial rise of estrogen during the follicular phase, which ultimately triggers a massive, sharp spike in LH, that luteinizing hormone, right around day 14. And that LH surge is the exact trigger for ovulation. Meanwhile, as all these hormones are dancing around, they're physically thickening the endometrial lining of the uterus, preparing this plush, perfectly receptive bed for a potential embryo. It's a completely synchronized system of cause and effect. Let's translate that biological dance into a chronological timeline you can actually use in everyday practice. Days 1 to 4 mark menstruation, the actual shedding of the endometrium. From days 5 to 13, stimulated by FSH, we see folliculogenesis, the development of an egg, and that simultaneous thickening of the uterine lining we just mentioned. Day 14 is the big one, the pivotal LH surge and ovulation. Then, from days 15 to 28, completely driven by progesterone, we enter the luteal phase. This is where the magic really happens, the establishment of the implantation window and peak endometrial receptivity. When you understand this timeline precisely, you know exactly when to intervene, when to test, and exactly when a patient is most fertile. And that brings us to part 5, spermatogenesis and transport, diving into applied male physiology. You know, the sperm's journey is nothing short of an epic marathon. To put it in perspective, it's roughly equivalent to a human swimming across the entire English Channel. It requires perfectly coordinated physiology at every single step. First off, we have spermatogenesis, the actual creation of sperm within the testes under the heavy influence of FSH and testosterone. Next, those cells have to be mixed with seminal plasma just to provide the energy and protection they need for ejaculation. But the journey has barely even begun at that point. Once inside the female reproductive tract, the sperm have to successfully navigate the cervical mucus. And remarkably, that mucus actually changes consistency based on the female's cycle to either block or aid transport. Finally, they have to survive the long, grueling swim up to the proximal fallopian tube to actually meet the egg. A failure at literally any one of these steps means natural fertilization simply cannot occur. Finally, part 6. Why basic science matters, how we translate this knowledge into real clinical impact. All of this matters because this foundational framework is absolutely essential for anyone practicing in reproductive medicine. When you truly, deeply grasp the baseline anatomy, physiology, and endocrinology, it directly dictates how effectively you can investigate a tricky case of subfertility. You aren't just out there guessing. You're systematically ruling out structural, chemical, and physiological roadblocks one by one. This profoundly enhances your overall clinical performance. And perhaps even more importantly, when you can clearly and confidently explain these foundational issues to your patients, it promotes an incredible level of trust and confidence in the management plan you've built for them. Which leaves us with this final thought for today. Think about your own day-to-day practice or your current studies. How is mastering this elegant biological blueprint going to transform the way you approach a complex fertility case? And ultimately, how will it boost the confidence of the patients sitting right across from you? Because at the end of the day, deeply understanding the basic science is the very first step in helping to create life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.